it became just a massive challenge for me. I just want to get as big and as strong as humanly possible. I used to do 225 for reps without a spot. As a matter of fact, your mum gave me a little bit of a spot there on my first 225 kilo lift.
They share a similar philosophy. It's not about competing with anyone else. So taking that from your gym into your life, where has that sort of helped you cross over?
I've always said it's a great metaphor for life. I mean, if you can go into the gym and if you can do anything where you can push yourself well beyond what most people could even imagine. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can do that there, theoretically you can do it anywhere.
I don't believe it.
You better believe it. Michael Culbert is back with us on part 2.
As you well know, it's generally the most challenging where we get the greatest lessons.
Fail my forward to success, come on!
That was better.
Does this man do the best impersonations of what?
We're working on them again. We're going to start implementing them. Chanel and I actually had a really interesting idea for a sub-channel.
Let us pause here while I summon a Kamehameha, and I will explain what is to come. This is where we finished last episode. Wyatt is now going to delve deeper into Michael's parenting philosophies. We explore the ripple effect we have on those around us. And Michael humbles himself, admitting he is not the ultimate love guru. He simply found the ultimate love when he was ultimately meant to.
She's going to interview all the different personalities and voices that I have and create in my head. So I'm just going to be the character that I've brought out to her randomly. She's going to interview him and get deep, or her, or it, or whatever I am. So,
I like that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to explore there. One thing I really wanted to ask, you were talking about in the next relationships, you thought you were a god who could create this love, create based on the systems that you know and based about these lessons that you've learned and the relationship that you had. You're not saying that there's no hope for those out there who have conflict. You had conflicts with Gail at points, right?
Oh, with Gail, very few. I think the worst thing we ever argued about was I thought the kitchen should be a little bit cleaner than she did.
Is that the one where I was hiding outside and counting because I heard swearing and we had a swear jar?
Oh, I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I certainly know there wasn't much swearing.
No, there wasn't. And that's why
between Gail and I. Yeah.
That's why I just sneak around. And we had a swear jar going. I remember this one. It was during the time when you were moving from Woolaware and you had all the family stuff going on.
Possibly, okay.
And you were in the kitchen talking to Gail and we were meant to be going somewhere. There was a whole bunch going on. And I just remember, I was like, ooh, I heard a swear word. And so I stopped and I just crept up by the wall and I'm just listening. Dad comes out. They're obviously having a very intimate conversation that no one was meant to be listening to. I can't for the life of me remember the conversation. Let's just put that out there. But I remember going, you owe me $12. You swore 12 times.
I actually made you remember that now.
Yeah, and because you had to teach me then and there that the lesson of, no, we have an agreement. We were having a private conversation. If you were listening in on that, you weren't meant to be. So the rules didn't apply. I didn't get it then, I get it now.
Well, that's interesting you say that because I believe your kids all do what you do, not what you say.
Yeah.
But now, Jett and Jaxon and you, especially you because you're older, you got to see this beautiful fairy tale relationship between Gail and I. And I love that you've said to me so many times that that's your benchmark. That's what you want. And I see you creating that. So I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, man.
And Jett and Jaxon, they were younger. They experienced that, and I know it's had an effect on them. Then when they saw my next relationship, which was quite toxic and lots of conflicts, I've had to clear that up with them afterwards and just talk openly with them and let them know why that happened. And it wasn't just about me being thinking I was the love guru and had it nailed and I could create this anytime.
Oh, we already know you're a god, so...
Far from it. Also, I was in grief. So I wasn't in a great mindset, which I think's another important topic as well, because I like the quote from that movie with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher, The Guardian.
The Guardian. That's where the Coast Guards and...
Coast Guards. And he's training him, and when he's training the guys, Kevin Costner was the lead instructor there, and he said the difference between you and the person that you're rescuing is the attitude in which you enter the water, right? And I think, with that as an example, I mean, they're the pros, and they're stronger swimmers. They're trained, right? They're ready, and when they go into the water, they're confident, they're strong, they know what they're there to do, right? And they get it done. But the person being rescued is generally in a state of panic, right? And I love that as a metaphor. It's the attitude in which you enter the water. No different to a relationship. The attitude in which you enter the relationship. And in back then, I was not in a good state at all. I was in grief. Wasn't ready for another relationship. I certainly could have. I would have loved to have done better myself, and I own the mistakes I made in that. So I think that's a really important thing, getting yourself in that state. And I see you doing that, man. I mean, look at you doing this podcast, wanting to learn more, wanting to teach. You've always been so open. I mean, I've had you reading personal development books since you were a teenager.
2005 was the first psychology book that... Sorry, not 2005. It would have been 2006. I was in grade 5 in Sydney, and you go back a year, from Queensland. So I was in grade 5, living with my dad, and I was struggling to have friends at school because I chopped and changed to so many different schools, so fitting in and some of them were hard. And Dad goes, I'm going to give you a book. I want you to study it. We're going to go over a chapter a week, and you're going to tell me what you're learning. And it was How to Make Friends.
It's false. It's fiction.
The correct book title is Making Friends.
I still remember the little cartoons on the cover of the white book, I believe it was. And
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the author, but he was a cartoonist before he went into authoring books.
Yeah, so you gave me that, and then it was on to Richest Man in Babylon. Is that the title of it?
Richest Man in Babylon,
Yep.
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist, yep. So all these books, all these lessons.
And how much of a difference did that make to your life?
Oh, big time. Now, especially too, when I reread them, or when I start noticing I've been living a certain way, and then I pick up this book and read it, I go, that's where I got that behavior from. That was when I read it back when I had that conversation with Dad, and those life lessons along the way.
Quote I heard many years ago, leaders are readers. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone who reads is a leader.
Yeah.
But you won't find a great leader who
doesn't
hasn't read extensively.
Yeah.
What goes in affects what comes out. And certainly what's coming out is affected by what's going in.
Yeah.
So I just think that is such an important thing. That's why I love what you're doing here. And I mean, you know me, how many podcasts I listen to, audio books and the Gottmans, as much information as I can get in to make my life better, your life better, the boys' life better. Yeah. I just love that. And what a great age we live in, where at our fingertips, our smartphones, computers, we go to YouTube or Google or whatever. There's anything you want to learn.
It's there.
If you're not doing well in any area of your life, and we're talking about relationships right now, there is so much information out there.
So many resources.
So many resources. There's just no excuse to fail.
Yeah.
No excuse to fail.
Well, you can fail as long as you're still failing towards the right track.
You only fail, in my opinion,
If you stop.
right?
If you don't
There'll
give
be
up.
plenty of little failures on the way, sometimes big failures, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's not a fail, right?
Unless you've gone, all right, that's it.
That's a speed hump. That's
I like that.
that's just something, a challenge to get through, right? So long as you don't give up. I remember back in 2007, Gal and I went into a property development deal, and it actually sent us broke. I remember Gal crying, and I just smiled. I said, "Hey babe, don't worry." I said, "Firstly, look at us, right? We've got through this. We're going through this challenge now. Our love hasn't waned at all. Our respect, our communication, our relationship, if anything, it's gotten stronger, right? And don't worry, because I won't stop. I won't give up, right? It's just a speed hump. Let's go."
Yeah. You always have that. You were Eternal optimist.
And why wouldn't you be? I mean,
Instead of Optimus Prime, we should call you Optimus Mike.
I like that.
Yeah, Optimus Mike.
But you know what? Actually, I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, and they asked me what my plan was for the future. And I said, went through a couple of plans. I said, but I've really done a lot of work over the last couple of years, especially about being in the moment. And I'm just really in the moment these days, and it feels actually really good. And really, that's the only place we find true joy and happiness, right? When you're in the moment. There's anxiety if you're worried about the future, and depression, worrying about the past. It's here and now, And I said to her, I just know. I have faith that everything's going to work out, And I've told you this quote before from Elliot Hulse: "There's always a storm coming," and it's who we become along the way, and what a beautiful thing. I mean, to actually understand that life's all about the ups, the downs, and it's not just so many people. I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if, and I used to be one of those people. It was always goal orientated. It was always, I'll be happy when, I'll be if. Right? These days, I've got big plans and I'm working towards them. But you know what? They're in the future. I've made the plans. I'll put the strategies in place.
They'll get there.
Do the work. It's going to come to me. It may not come to me exactly as I plan it, right? But it's coming. I'm living this great life. So hey, thank you. Keep it coming.
Rain it down.
Rain it down.
Rain it down. Well, you're on the money. Speaking of what we're doing with this podcast and how we're building the community and the purpose behind it and people learning, we really want to make something where people can come to and they can listen. They can just have their voice be heard. They can pop in the comments and say, hey, look, this is what I'm going through. Can you give some advice? The amount of resources around us right now, the people that we know and maybe just haven't asked the questions or haven't found their story, haven't delved deep into it enough. Everyone has a story. And I know everyone who's listening right now in the community is going to have their own challenges that they've gotten through and that they could share. And it might only be sharing it to one other person who's going to make a massive difference to their life. But that one other person is going to create a huge ripple effect. You've created massive ripple effects, and you speak about this often by creating me, Jett and Jaxon, my two little brothers. One thing I also know is when it comes to living in the present, living in the now, Jett's been one of your biggest teachers.
Oh, you know your brother's like, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, as soon as you mention his name, as soon as anybody mentions his name, actually, since anybody mentioned any of my son's names, I light up. But,
Jett's just a special one.
You're all special in your own way, but you want to talk about...
Yeah, we are, Dad.
But you want to talk about living in the moment, you are absolutely right. There's no one I know, there's no human I've ever met that's more in the moment than your brother, my son, Jett. And it's interesting, for years I was trying to make him more like me. I was trying to get him goal-orientated, driven, right? I'd be pulling my hair out and just I couldn't understand why, because he'd say, yeah, he'd agree, right? And then, the next day he'd be doing exactly the same thing he was doing, right?
Yeah.
We went on for years. And it was only really the last couple of years I thought, actually, you know what? I think he's here to teach me just as much as I'm here to teach him. And it was him that I really modelled because how could you not want to have that joy? I mean, you know what he's like. I mean,
that laugh.
Oh, the laugh. Oh, my God.
So contagious.
And so many times I've heard throughout the years, doing, God, countless different experiences, but so many times say, Dad, that was the best day of my life.
Yeah.
Right? And to see that, feel that, hear that, wow, And only about 18 months ago, he loves supercars, right? Mm-hmm. Tell you every stat that there is on supercars, as you know. Yeah. And he asked me, he said, Dad, do you think we could go around and visit all the supercar dealerships around Sydney? I said, buddy, let's go. All right, let's do it. So we mapped them all out and away we went. And at the end of the day, he's 16 years old, nearly 17. And he looked at me, we're driving home, we left the last car dealership, it was Porsche at Alexandria. And He looked at me and said, Dad, that was the greatest day of my life. And I mean, number one, just to be around somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
Is
Keep in
just
mind, this is someone who's been overseas, been to Disneyland, gone on cruises with their auntie, but...
mostly thanks to Auntie Ruth, yes.
Yeah, thanks to Auntie Ruth. But the point that you're getting across, and I can once again attest to this, is that boy just seems to find... My brother just seems to find the joy and the absolute gift that comes to being here every day.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, to be around that, to experience that, to be sharing that experience with somebody, and I let that be a lesson to me too. If I feel that way with him sharing that experience with me, well, I'm figuring that if I'm that way, somebody else is going to be feeling pretty good about me sharing that experience with them.
Oh, for sure.
And I know I've had friends and family say that over the last couple of years, especially over the last 6-12 months, how much lighter I am. And I know you've said it.
Not just in kilos.
Not just in kilos. So that's great. I love that. And hey, thank you, Jett.
Yeah. We've just had Jackson's 15th birthday. When we were talking at dinner, I mentioned how you got to grind your teeth on me and then learn all these lessons through Jett. And then you've just popped out Jackson, like, all right, complete now. Yeah, we're good. Because that kid, he's athletic, he's smart, he's social, he's a pleasure to be around. If you could give advice to the listeners right now for single dad, then you've turned around, you've come from that position and you're you now. And I've never seen you lighter. You float when you walk around. You have this energy and presence about you that's just pulls people to you. You had that before, but that was more, you were loud, you were big, you were exciting. Now you're warm. You're a presence that people, well, I know I feel enjoy to be around. How have you taken all that and then crafted this masterpiece of parenting to come out with Jett and Jaxon? Not once have I heard them have a fight. I know me and my older brother, he used to beat the crap out of me quite often. I haven't heard these guys once fight. They share whatever desserts they get. If there's not two, there's only one. They're either going to share or they're going to go, oh, you have this, Jett, or you have this, Jaxon. I'll find something else. Like, how did you do that? Most people will say that's not possible. Most parents, not one fight. They're 17 and 15 now, and you're saying they've never argued, never had a fight over a toy, or one getting something and the other one didn't.
With intention.
Yeah.
With intention. As far as I'm concerned, I think a lot of parents, miss this point that as parents, we are primarily responsible for the level of success in our kids' lives. Nobody's going to have a greater influence over them if we choose. Right? If we are not proactive and we sit back as parents, somebody else will have a greater influence over them. Probably not the people you want to have an influence over your kids. So for me, it's always been about. I had a shitty childhood. Not much of a father and a mother to talk about. I won't go into the details of that. You know those details. That was a bit messy, but I knew that I did not want my kids to have that sort of life. I wanted to make sure that my kids were loved, supported, and I was big on loyalty and that family bond and the brotherhood. So from a very early age, I do with the boys, very early age.
I know what you did, but please.
I'd ask Jett, who's your best friend in the world?
Jaxon is.
Jaxon, who's your best friend in the world?
Jett is.
And I had them programmed to do that, right? Obviously, I let them know who their best friend was.
Explain it to them.
I keep asking them the question and reinforcing that, but also I let them know how important it was. And I think with kids, show them how anything you're teaching them can benefit their life not in the future, now and the not too distant future.
That's a massive one.
Right? that's where you get leverage on kids. Like you want to influence your kid as a teenager, probably a great idea is to show them these values and how those values can help them get a partner, right? To get
Or
a girlfriend,
social
get a
status.
boyfriend, or show social status, anything, right? Anything that's really important to them at any stage of their life, right?
And key point, it doesn't matter if you're a parent and the thing isn't important to you that they're focusing on. Like you're saying, it's those core values and how you can use what's important to them to implement those.
But, you want to teach them about respect, you make sure you give them that respect too, and,
Yeah.
and you show them that you give other people respect. And so for me, it was just about making sure that I did everything I possibly could to create values and beliefs in my boys, you included, that would give them the greatest chance of success in their life, in relationships, in finances, career, school, social, whatever. And you know what? I think I've done a pretty good job.
I think you've done an amazing job, big man.
Good luck.
Not. I'm just for them in this case.
No, for you too.
Well, I
And,
appreciate that.
I'm very proud, and you know that.
Yeah.
And I say that sincerely. And you know I've always been honest too.
Yeah.
If I
Oh, you've
thought you
very
needed
much
it.
told me that when I need to pull my head in, to pull my head in. But that's one thing I think. Growing up, I've run away from home. There was some conflicts that we had where things just didn't go right, and you say you didn't have me from day dot. You didn't have me from birth until like the boys are their teenage years. Jordan Peterson, a big person that both of us follow, he believes that it's a parent's responsibility to teach their child how to be socially and behaviorally acceptable by the age of 4. Because you have from 0 to 4 to teach them how to be socially and behaviorally acceptable in society. Whether that's what you believe is right or wrong, or if society is the way it should be, this is the society that you live in now. And you can teach those values like you have with Jett and Jaxon, how you can incorporate living in this society and having these important values and how they're actually going to benefit their life today and in the future. It's amazing, big man.